Hello, this is Christine Elder and Lisa Sorensen from BirdsCaribbean, and we're going to be teaching you all about barn owls today and their biology and anatomy and their distribution, and mostly how to sketch them. So, Lisa, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about BirdsCaribbean?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for joining us. I am Lisa Sorensen. I'm the Executive Director of BirdsCaribbean. And this fall, throughout September, October, and into November, we are celebrating World Migratory Bird Day. And this is celebrated all over the world, actually, and in the Americas, and also in the tropics and Southern Hemisphere, we tend to celebrate World Migratory Bird Day in the fall, because this is when all the migrants are heading south, and we like to say they're returning home. So we've got a big influx of migrants coming to stay for the winter, and then some are just passing through, stopping over to rest and refuel on their long migrations. In the US and Canada, World Migratory Bird Day is often celebrated in the spring because, of course, beautiful breeding birds are returning home to nest. So you can celebrate Bird Day whenever you want. We encourage you to visit this website to learn more about it and download some helpful resources to help you celebrate.
Great.
Okay, and then just a little bit more about BirdsCaribbean. We are a regional nonprofit, and we are dedicated to conserving birds and nature in all of the islands of the Caribbean. So we work with our partners on endemic species and residents and migrants and threatened birds. There's actually 171 species of birds that are endemic to the Caribbean. They can be found here and nowhere else in the world. So species like the toady, the little bird that you see on the upper left with the pink sides, trogons, hummingbirds, amazing birds. And if you haven't yet traveled to the Caribbean to see birds, I encourage you to try to do so. So we welcome you to follow us on social media. Just look for BirdsCaribbean, and I'll also put in the chat box where you can sign up to get our newsletter if you're interested in following all kinds of news and information about Caribbean birds, both our endemics and our migrants.
Great. Yes, I loved the Caribbean. I've been to a lot of the islands and visited you down there with the annual conference for BirdsCaribbean. So it's a great organization. Thanks for all of your hard work. Okay.
And then just one last piece of information. For our Caribbean celebration of World Migratory Bird Day, we have been doing a Migratory Bird of the Day. So that is posted on our website, and there's and also on our social media. So nearly every day you can download a new coloring page, you can get natural history information, see beautiful photos of these birds, videos, hear their calls, and so forth. So I encourage you to follow us at our website. Just look at that bit.ly link, Birds Connect Our World, and I'll also put the link in the chat window. So if you have kids, the coloring book is great. And then we also have fun activities like crossword puzzles and word searches and things like that, all related to migratory birds. So thanks a lot. And Christine, I'll turn it over to you now. Thank you.
Okay, Lisa. Are there 3 books now that you've produced for kids?
Yeah, we've got a few different books. We have 2 coloring books right now. We have the Endemic Birds of the West Indies, which Christine is our illustrator on. It's a fabulous book. I've got one handy right here to show you. And this is available for free download also on our website. And there's also coloring pages that you can download. So just look for that on our website as well. We've got the Migratory Bird coloring book. And then we've got some other fun resources for kids. Lots of activity pages. We've got curriculum for teachers. So just take a look at our resources page and you'll find lots of cool stuff.
Fabulous. Okay, great. Well, Lisa, I'll take over now, and you can stay in the chat box if people have questions for Lisa or anything about Birds of the Caribbean or her organization, BirdsCaribbean. You can ask in the chat box, and Lisa will answer you. And Lisa, if you could just turn off your sound, which I think you have, that would be great. Okay, so let's really get started. Mary Ellen says it is streaming on Facebook, so it looks like we're good here. So we're both on Facebook and Crowdcast, and you can put some of your comments on Facebook as well. And then after we're done with this, it will be up on the BirdsCaribbean YouTube channel eventually as well. So anyway, how do we roll today? basically, we have the resources button down below where it says download your barn owl image. And hopefully you've heard about that. And I did send you a link to that. So if you had a chance to download your high resolution image, that's great. If you didn't, no worries. Just have a pencil and paper and you can follow along with us. But if you're really afraid of drawing, don't worry, don't leave us. Stick around because we're going to start off with the biology and anatomy of owls and barn owls in particular. And then we'll lead you through a sketching demo. And if you're afraid to sketch, you can just watch and kind of warm up, maybe watch the replay. You're free to sign up, come to the same link later on here on Crowdcast or replay it on Facebook, of course. And you can always watch the replay again, especially if you want to go through the sketching demo. So then at the end, we're going to have sharing, which is one of my favorite parts. And that's where you can get up and ask questions for either me or Lisa Sorensen, the executive director of BirdsCaribbean. And then, yeah, so you can also share your sketches because lots of times people are able to share. We're going to go really slowly, step by step. So I promise you can share. I mean, that you can follow along. And I'd love to see your beautiful faces up here sharing with us. Because like a lot of people, me and Lisa probably too, are sheltering in place, working from home, and we don't get as much outside talking with people as we'd probably like to. Okay, so anyway, let's keep going here. So anyway, again, today the topic is sketching barn owls. And first we're going to introduce owls in general, the two families, some of their general characteristics, and then we're going to do, I think, about a 20-minute demo of how to draw them. So thank you everybody who's joined so far. I just wanted to say hi to people like Carol and who else do we have? Patricia, Pat, Dennis, Mary Ellen, Iris, Elaine, Anya, Joji, Jacqueline, Bridget. Thank you so much for joining us today. And of course, all of you folks who are watching us and participating on Facebook. So, it's only a couple days until Halloween, and there's lots of myths and legends about owls. And so that's why we left this third workshop in the series on owls to be just before Halloween. I did want to remind you, like I think Lisa said, that we had 2 other workshops in this series that I've taught. One other one was on the American kestrel and also one on the northern pintail. So, but the barn owl and owls in general have been in myth and legends for time immemorial, right? And so depending on where you're from in the world, owls either represented good or bad omens, right? And I encourage you later on to go to the BirdsCaribbean YouTube channel and watch their presentation on the legend of Chick Charney. And that was presented by Scott Johnson of the Bahamas National Trust. And he tells you all about this legend, which is about a bird that may or may not have actually been a real barn owl ancestor that lived in the Bahamas. Okay, so owls, we have this common name owl, and we generally think they'd be all related, and they are to some extent, but they are in 2 different families. So we've got our barn owls, which are over here, right? And so these guys are in the family Titanidae, and this barn owl is actually named for that. Its genus is Tyto. And so there's just about 18 species in 2 genera. And the barn owl that we have here in North America is our basically our only representative here in North America. And then the other family are what we call our regular or typical owls. They're in a different family from barn owls in the Strigidae. A lot more diverse. There's over 200 species of those. In 26 genera, and they're all over the world. So we're not going to talk too much more about them. We're going to focus on the barn owl family. We will chat a little bit, though, about general characteristics and things that they share. Now, the barn owl family is a little bit different than your typical owls in that generally they have a lighter build, they have longer legs, they have that heart-shaped face. They have asymmetrical ear holes, which some of the other genera in the true owls do as well, but not all of them, to help them hear. Also, the barn owl family, they don't do the characteristic hooting as much as a normal owl. They're going to be more of a sort of a screamer or a hisser. And that might be another reason that barn owls in particular are known a lot from legend, not only because they're white and fly around at night and are great predators and kind of spooky looking white like a ghost, but also because they have this voice. Now, Lisa was going to share with us the sound of the barn owl. I don't know if Lisa wants to share that again. I can share Lisa's to share her on here again, but you can always Google that sound as well. So if Lisa's around.
Yeah, I can play it.
So play us the characteristic sound of barn owls, particularly our species here, Tyto alba.
Okay, here goes. Hope it'll come through all right.
Don't hear it yet. No, I don't hear it. Anyway, so maybe she or somebody else could put in the chat box a link to their sound, probably on All About Birds, the Cornell Lab, or you could always Google that. So anyway, the barn owl family has more like hisses instead of hoots, which again is probably another reason that they're well represented in legends and folk tales, spooky things of this time of year. Okay. So let's see, where were we going? Yeah. So anyway, we were talking about how there's the two families, the barn owls and the typical owls, and how the barn owl family has the lighter build and longer legs. And here we go here. So the barn owl is right here. And there are actually about 15 species in that group. And then there are 3 species in this other group, this kind of funny looking guy these guys are called bay owls. And so that's kind of interesting. In general, this family also, besides being lighter build and longer legs with this heart-faced shape instead of just the oval shape, they do have the asymmetrical ears, like I mentioned, the ear holes in their skull, which are just to the outside of where their eyes are. And that helps them to hear better and to really pinpoint where their prey are at night. And their legs are completely feathered. You can see these featherings. So a lot more feathering on the legs than the other owls. And it's thought that they're kind of more, this family of barn owls is more in warmer and tropical regions, except our barn owl, which does get a lot farther north than a lot of other members of this family, up into Canada and Alaska. So, and there are also another group of barn owls that are called masked owls, or sooty or red owls, and also there's an ashy-faced owl. So anyway, there's, like I said, about 18 species altogether in this family. Oh, I see, Lisa, yeah, put a link here for the call of the barn owl. You can hear that on eBird, thanks. So maybe we'll get back to that later if we have a chance. Okay, so anyway, in general, characteristics of all owls, regardless of which family they're in. So you see they have the super characteristic face. They have a lot of adaptations for being nocturnal and for being birds of prey. They're basically the nocturnal version of our hawks and our eagles, the buteos and all those guys. So they're even better at hunting at night. So they've got these really large eyes. Sometimes they're colored, sometimes they're dark, like in our barn owl. So they can be gold or orange or yellow, but giant eyes, and the eyes are very much pointed forward on a big flat face. So that's more forward than in, other basic songbirds or even in most birds of prey. So they've got a flatter face, eyes pointing forward, very large eyes so that they can see their prey at night. And they've got great binocular vision. So they're going to see, have a lot better depth of vision, although they can't see very well close up. And so they've got lots of hairs on their facial disc here that help them to feel their prey once they have it in their mouth, especially also kind of these thread-like feathers that are on the legs as well to help them feel their prey. So anyway, they got this big flat facial disc of all of these hairs that radiate, hair-like feathers that radiate from the center here, and they can move those to some extent to help them again to pinpoint the sound of their prey. And their bill is very hooked and strong and often serrated. So again, a lot like diurnal birds of prey, like hawks. But it's kind of lower on the face and kind of flatter and pointed down more, which helps their eyes to be able to see their binocular vision better, to see the prey, and also to hear them with that facial disc. So yeah, that's a lot about the face. So some owls have these big tufts on their head. They're called ear tufts. And, there's lots of members of the regular typical owl family that have that, like the long-eared owl, short-eared, flammulated screech owl, and of course this great-horned owl. And those have nothing to do with ears. They have to do with their mood, and they can move them around a bit and flatten them on their body if they want to. And what else was I going to say about that? Yeah. So now another reason that owls are kind of connected with Halloween and connected with spooky things and the macabre is because they can turn their heads so far. So in this image, you can see the barn owl turning all the way around, and they can turn up to 270 degrees. And that relates to the fact that since their eyes are very much facing forward, it's not like a deer that has eyes on the side of their head and they can easily see to the left and the right. They have very much forward-facing eyes that can't move in their sockets. So they have to have a head that's much more flexible. And so they've actually got a longer neck and more vertebrae than, say, like humans do. They've got 14 vertebrae in that neck, which allows them to turn all the way around, both left and right, and they can also tip their head almost upside down as well. So that's another reason that they're associated with Halloween and scary things, because they're almost like demonic in the way that they can turn their head. It almost seems otherworldly. Okay. And let's see, owls. These are a few more owls from actually Central America. Photos from my friend James Adams there, just showing that owls are basically kind of stocky, round with short tails, and really kind of short. Their head sort of is just an extension of their body. It's very large for their size relatively. And they're going to have a lot of this very cryptic coloration. Now, these guys are pretty obvious against the green of the leaves, but depending on where an owl is at any moment, it might blend in better or not. So they often have these very interesting camouflaged colorations, and lots of intricate markings on them that make them fun actually to draw and paint. Let's see. They live in lots of different habitats depending on the species all over the world. So really varied depending on, like I said, the species and the latitude. owls in general range from up in the boreal forests of Europe and America down into Argentina and South Africa. So really varied, have taken over a lot of ecosystems, and they're important predators and help with rodent control, right? A few more examples. Of course, lots of owls are nocturnal. Some of them are more crepuscular, meaning you can see them better during the morning and night. And some are more diurnally active. So you'll see barn owls outside too during the day. And here's another kind of owl that screeches instead of as much as hooting. And another example of different color patterns. There aren't very many owls that are very lightly colored. Like the barn owl is the beautiful cream color, and the snowy owl is very white. This picture is also to remind me that lots of owls, are usually in the trees and flying around and perching in trees, but some owls are more on the ground, like snowy owls, owls that are going to live up in the tundra and boreal forests where there's not as many trees. And then, of course, burrowing owls, those guys are in North America, like the snowy, and those guys are going to be found mostly on the ground, and you can see those in the daytime as well. And then owls really range in size. The great gray owl is our largest, up to 27 inches long. Another owl, the spotted owl, you've probably heard about, which was made the Pacific Northwest virgin old growth forests famous in the 80s and 90s with the spotted owl wars. Now, this picture is to remind me about their feathers. Of course, they're very silent flyers. So all the owls, both families, have these adaptations of their feathers to have very soft edges and kind of velvety on the top and bottom, and that makes them able to fly very silently. Again, this is a great adaptation for being the fierce predators that they are, and to sneak up on their prey. But the problem with that, though, is that owls in general aren't as waterproof, especially not like ducks. So they can get cold easy, and you're not going to see them out hunting in the rain and the snow. Okay, so moving on a little bit closer to what we're really talking about today specifically is our barn owl. And again, this is the third workshop in a series where we're talking about migratory birds of the world. And so this is what we're talking about, Tyto alba. Alba, the word means white, and Tyto refers to the family name, Titonidae. And so, they historically have been one of the world's most abundant and widespread species. And some folks have talked about that there might be some subspecies, but I'm not really up on the taxonomy, and that's always changing. But in general, they're all over the place. And of course, they're all over here in North America. And Joji in the chat box, Joji asked, the subjects of the first two workshops in the series were the northern pintail duck and the American kestrel. And you can still see those if you go to my main Crowdcast page, or if you go onto the BirdsCaribbean YouTube channel. Okay, and so let's see, where was I? So there are lots of different habitats since they are so widespread. Barn owls can be, down into the tropical rainforests and in deciduous forests, in evergreen forests. They can be kind of here in cottonwood forests. So they're very, lot of different habitats. But generally within the home range of any one individual, they're going to have some forested area, as well as some open land to be able to hunt. And here's one in I think a palm tree. And this one's a juvenile. You can see it's still got some of its baby feathers there. Great. Here's an image of them flying. You see, this is just a good image here to see how long their legs are. So again, this family of owls, remember there's two families. The barn owl family are longer legged with a lot more feathers down on the legs than regular owls. And the males and females differ to some extent. Like most owls, the females are larger to some extent. Now, barn owls are about 16 inches high and about a pound, that they weigh about a pound. Isn't that amazing? So they're kind of a mid-size between our smallest elves and our largest great grays. And here's that heart-shaped face, that characteristic heart-shaped face. So all owls have that facial disc, but they don't have, only the barn owl family has sort of a more heart at the bottom, instead of sort of two half-circle commas that the other owls have. So females are generally a bit larger than the 1 pounds, and they have a darker coloration in general. And you can see, though, how camouflaged they are. This cryptic coloration is just beautiful. And here they are flying. You can see those big feathers. Again, they fly silently like other members of the owl family. Owl families with the special feather structure to let them fly silently. And so they are fierce hunters. In the whole two families of owls, the diets really vary throughout the year and for each species. The smaller owls might focus more on insects and other invertebrates, whereas the larger owls might go for rodents like this one here, or even larger mammals. And then some owls, like great horned owls, will even go after other owls and other smaller birds of prey. So variety of food is very wide, and you see down here these big, strong talons, just like other birds of prey, that can grasp that prey item and crush it easily, break its back for making it edible. Okay, and then here's a cute picture of just one feeding the baby. And so they're going to be nesting with their partner, usually in trees, old cavities like those left by maybe larger woodpeckers or other cavity dwellers. Sometimes they'll use an old nest of a hawk or other bird of prey. Sometimes they'll nest even in the witches' brooms of trees. And of course, sometimes in barns. Now, barn owls, not all owls eat their food whole, but barn owls do. And it's really interesting to be able to look at the regurgitated remains, which are called owl pellets. Some of you may have done that in school, dissected an owl pellet, because each pellet is an exact whole skeleton. So you can very easily study the diversity of prey, because you can identify them to species by looking at the bones. Okay, and so there's some examples of some of the roosting and nesting habitats. Okay, and you can learn a lot more about birds and general bird anatomy and owls as well in this great book, The Manual of Ornithology. It has this really cute cover of the eastern screech owl. And there's a picture of the skeleton, similar to other birds in general, but you see, the large head and that long neck that allows them to turn 270 degrees. And in a sec, we'll look more at these wings, because we're going to be drawing those. Okay, and so here's that outstretched wing. We are going to be having a pretty challenging bird today, but many of you watching have drawn a lot of birds with me, and some of you have already drawn the very challenging American kestrel with me, and the pintail duck. And so here's some of those feathers. These are the feathers of the primary flight feathers on the wing, and you can see how they are sort of barred there. So lots of different colors on each wing that contributes to the overall barring and spotting pattern of the whole bird. Okay, let's keep going. We got to start sketching. There's lots of advantages to sketching, and I encourage all of you guys, no matter if you think that you can't draw a straight line or a stick figure, I really encourage you to take a sketchbook out in the field or even a clipboard and some paper and draw what you see. For me, it doesn't matter if your drawing looks like just a little kid's cartoon. The fact that you looked at something long enough to draw it will give you a greater appreciation and understanding of its anatomy and behavior. And especially if you're a bird watcher or a beginning bird watcher, sketching them is a great way to learn those field marks and to learn to identify the birds much more quickly. Okay, so I love to travel. I've traveled all over the world sketching birds, both teaching sketching workshops and leading tours and leading bird watching tours all over, mostly the Western Hemisphere. So it's really helps me, like this picture in Costa Rica where I was sketching the quetzal. Okay, so just a few quick tips before we start, because I think I recognize a lot of your names in the chat box, and I know a lot of you people have sketched with me already, but I want you to try to pretend that we're sketching in the field. We're not going to do you know, an ornithological illustration like a John James Audubon. So we want to try to pretend we're sketching live moving birds. So we want to really hold our pencil lightly and loosely. Let me just make my face a little bit bigger here right now. I want you to make your pencil light and loose. I often use a mechanical pencil, and you just keep that pencil moving. Just keep looking and observing and keep drawing. Avoid erasing, continuing to glance back and forth at your subject and your paper, looking at your subject even more than you look at your paper to make sure that you're drawing from observation and not from memory or imagination. And like I said before, focusing on the process rather than the final product, and appreciating how much you've learned about that organism after you finish. No matter how awful your drawing is, I don't even care if you crumple up your drawing and throw it away afterwards. What I care is that you've learned something about the, you know, the eyes and the beak and the wing structure and the tail and the talons, much more than you ever would if you were just looking at it from binoculars or even reading about it or watching a video. Okay. And let's see, we have in the chat box, Lisa is mentioning the Birds of the World is a fantastic resource. That's right. Okay, great. So let's keep going. Yeah, so like I said, we're not trying to be John James Audubon here. Here's a couple of beautiful paintings that he did from life or death, as it were, including a barn owl and a great horned owl. And you can see all that beautiful detail. Okay, so we're going to sketch. This is the bird we're sketching in this pose. It's a very interesting, complicated pose, but I promise that you're going to be able to do it. It's going to be about 20 or 30 minutes, I think. And we've already spoken a bit about the anatomy of owls, so that should help you to draw more accurately. But there's a few other things you can think about while you're drawing. Make sure to be looking at proportions. So, you know, when we start our drawing, we're going to start with a circle, and then we're going to start thinking about the relative proportion of the parts that we add to that circle. So how big the circle of the facial disc is compared to the body, and how long the tail is in proportion to the length of the body. Okay. Then we're going to want to look at angles. Okay. So that means like, these angles between the wings. This is like a 90-degree angle. And then alignments. You want to look at what structures are aligned with other ones. Like you see in these secondary feathers, they're all parallel to each other and lined up. And so is all this barring on the tail. and the two legs are lined up parallel. And then next is negative shapes. So noticing the shapes that aren't the bird, and that will help you to draw the bird just as much as if you're looking at the actual shape of the bird, maybe even more. So things like this nice little triangle here that's between the back of the body and the wing. So those what I mean by negative shapes, okay? And since we're drawing this this whole bird here, I'll be showing you a close-up of the face so that you can draw that a little bit more accurately. And here again, you can see that big flat facial disc we'll draw. Those big eyes that are dark in the barn owl. They're not yellow or gold like some of those other species. And they've got this very strong bill that's very strongly hooked, and it's kind of hidden between these tactile feathers that help it to manipulate the prey. And it's well below the eye, you notice, way down there, and really pointing down instead of out, like you might see how like a bald eagle has the hooked beak very much in the same plane and height as the eye. Okay, so then we're going to be drawing the wings, and we're going to be noticing the different parts there. And if you know much about birds, the wing is sort of homologous to our arms. So they've got the shoulder that's kind of hidden within the body, and then they've got the forearm, and at the end of the forearm is the wrist. And this big set of feathers here, this is actually 3 feathers called the alula, and those are attached to the actual thumb of the hand of the bird. And those really help them in maneuvering, especially when they're slowing down like this bird is just about to capture its prey. So they can lift those, just like you can when you're flying in a plane and you see them lifting the parts of those little levers on the wing to help them to land, right? And then there's 2 parts to the wing we're going to draw. The primary flight feathers, which are right here. Every group of birds has a different number of feathers in general, and owls have 10 of these primaries. And if you notice, they're all radiating pretty much from this wrist area. So they're going to kind of be going out in directions like this. And then there's a big set of feathers back here. Usually owls, they're kind of like ducks and having a whole bunch of feathers. And there's, I think, about 15. Usually in owls, I think the secondaries are like between 12 and 18 or something. And I think there's 15 here. But we can't see all of those, but we do see that they're parallel here. And there's a set of them that are kind of lifted up. But partly that's just because of the way this owl is going in for the kill and starting to break. Okay, let's see. Now then, when we draw the other wing, we'll notice again the forearm and the alula. You can actually kind of see the 3 alula feathers here. And then there's all of these feathers on top that we can see on the bird's left wing. And those are what we call coverts that are kind of covering and making that wing more aerodynamic and protecting the flight feathers. And then you see all these flight feathers. And what I really want you to notice when we're drawing this in just a second is how they overlap. So if you were a tiny little ant and you were on the bird's back, you would be going out this way towards the edge of the wing, and you would be stair-stepping down. Each of these parallel feathers each one would be under the one after it. So when we draw it, this one will be on top and then under, 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 under. Whereas this one, when we're looking at them from the bottom, it's just the opposite. And this outermost feather will look like it's on top, and we'll be drawing this under, 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 under. Okay. Anyway, it seems like we're spending a lot of time talking about anatomy, but it's going to really help you to draw more quickly and more accurately. And we're going to start in just a second because I know we're a little bit behind time. So then we're going to draw the feet, and I will have sort of a close-up for you to see them a little bit better. Not going to spend much time on those because it does take a while to really learn foot anatomy. But what I do want to make sure that you notice is that the legs are quite long for an owl, and they've got all of these feathers. And then they have the ankle. Well, no, wait, the ankle's back here. And then they have the 3 toes pointing forward and 1 back. So on the bird's right foot, we can see all 3 of those, 1, 2, 3. And then this is the back toe. But anyway, those will be pretty small, so we're not going to spend much time on those today. And again, today's not a biological illustration, and we're not ornithologists. We're just trying to draw to learn and appreciate more about birds. And I already mentioned all of these things, so that's good. We can keep moving on. And we're going to now start sketching. I'm going to start my little video. So hopefully you have your pencils and paper ready. And when you're done, maybe Lisa or someone can post this in the chat box. We'd love to have you share your sketches online at this hashtag, which stands for World Migratory Bird Day 2020 in the Caribbean. Of course, we're talking about barn owls all over the world, but that's the hashtag. Okay, so who's ready to get started? Tell me in the chat box. Now, I know we've got people watching here on Crowdcast as well as on Facebook and eventually on YouTube. So hopefully you're ready. If you're watching from Facebook or YouTube, you can still sign up over here on Crowdcast and download this high resolution image we're using later on. And remember, you can always watch the replay too to study up on drawing the parts. Great, I see lots of people ready. Pranjal and Cheryl and Alvana and Joji. Iris already started. Oh, you cheated. Well, I do tend to talk a lot. So what we do is we get out of that picture. That's the slideshow. We get into my pre-recorded video because it's pretty much impossible to talk and draw at the same time. And it's a lot easier to stop this when I need to if there's questions and not lose my way. Okay, so we're going to get started. And so we're going to start with the overall shape. And then we're going to get each of the parts, and I'll be showing you a close-up photo of each of those parts to make it easier. And your homework is to draw the other bird on the right. But we are only drawing this larger bird on the left for now. The one on the right is just for fun to show you a bird facing you in a little bit different direction and a different lighting. You can see much richer coloration in that one. Okay, so ready? Now, if you only have a regular piece of paper, like this one is, you should just draw it about half the size of a regular piece of paper. Either if it's too much bigger or smaller than that, then it's going to take you a lot longer to draw, or you won't be able to get the level of detail we want to get. Okay, let's get going. So I first just air draw by looking at all these parts that we already talked about. So just naming those to yourself in your mind, noticing those angles, alignments, and negative shapes, and relative proportions. And so we're going to start by placing our main body on the piece of paper. We're going to be drawing sort of an oval to just get the main body mass before we start adding the extremities. So I want you to draw as lightly and loosely as you possibly can, even lighter than this. I draw this dark so that you can see it, but I hope that you will be drawing it lighter. So you don't feel the need to do too much erasing, okay? So we're just drawing a circle for the whole body first, just getting the sort of length and width. And I do a lot of measuring like I am here to double check, because we want to really get our proportions correct before we start adding all of the individual feathers and legs and tails and all that. So I've got my outline of my body, so I'm just kind of lightening it up now so it's not too distracting. And then I'm going to firm it up. And again, remember, you can always watch the replay if we're going too fast, and you can watch it, I think, at slower speed even, or pause it anytime you want. So just looking at those relative proportions, going to get that little oval of the face and get a lot more detail on that later. So right now we're just placing the width and the height of the face, that big flat facial disc. And placing the, yeah, there we go, and the neck and the legs, just a little box to show where the legs are, just kind of the length and width, and noticing sort of where it is. Then moving on to the tail and looking at that angle, that's kind of a 45-degree angle that the tail is at, because this bird is coming in for the pounce, for the kill. And he's sort of breaking. I think this is a he because he's pretty light on the belly. Again, the males are going to be a little darker, a little lighter and smaller. So just getting this tail, we see the whole left side of, the bird's right side of his tail, and a little bit of the fuzz underneath, and of the bird's other side of his tail. And the upper tail coverts and those fluffy belly feathers that we're going to keep very light. They've got 12 feathers in their tail, and we can kind of see these 6 parallel feathers on the bird's right group, but we'll add those a little bit later. Very lightly penciling in the upper tail coverts and the undertail coverts, and those belly and vent feathers that are very downy and light. Now putting some more energy into the legs here, noticing the length and the height of that mass. So you see, I always start from the most general shapes and then get more specific. I know it looks pretty funny right now, but we're going to get there. I was just placing the eye there for fun. Okay, now we're going to get closer to this right wing, noticing where it sort of aligns there with the head and then goes up at a very gentle angle. And we're just going to draw a big oval for where it is, placing where the shoulder is there and the joint of the shoulder and forearm, and then all the way out to the primary flight feathers, the little alula feathers group, and then the big oval for the primaries and secondaries. Double checking the length and width, always doing a lot of that early on so we don't get too off base, so we can keep seeing the forest for the trees, as they say, and looking at the big picture before we start adding any details. Noticing that nice negative triangular shape between the secondaries and the bird's back. So it just kind of looks like a big old paddle for now, but again, we're just getting the representing kind of the left-brained symbolic shapes of the bird before we get more into the right-brained exact shapes. Now we're going to place his left wing. We're going to notice how far back it starts from the head disc. Double checking my proportions first. So I'm always doing that many times. Firming up the back. So now we're going to place the wing. How far is it back from the face, the heart-shaped face shield? And how wide is the wing? It's right there. The back of it comes pretty close to the alula of the right wing. And now that we have the front and the back leading edge, we're going to make a big oval for the whole wing. So we got the forearm there. We've got the little oval of the alula, those 3 feathers that can be used to break. Then we have the primary flight feathers. We only see those on the bird's left wing. The secondaries are hidden behind the other wing. Double checking our widths, firming things up. Okay, just keep going here. I got a little bit squished on the side of my paper, but that's okay. Getting the coverts area there, those upper wing coverts, and then the primary flight feathers, and they're very arched. And that leading primary feather almost comes in front of the alula. See how it angles, how it aligns? So we're always looking at relative proportions, angles, alignments, negative shapes over and over again as we draw. Okay. We're getting all that penciled in. Hopefully you're keeping up, and if you're not, you can always watch the replay. So noticing where we are in the video. Okay, now I'm going to give you a close-up of this face. We're obviously not going to get all this detail, but I just wanted you to be able to see it better from pretty much the same angle. This bird is this big image. It's looking at us just slightly more than the other bird in the paper, but that's okay. I just wanted to show you this image and have you use it to refer to so that you could see the bill, because the bill is pretty much completely hidden in this bird that's flying. So we're just getting this heart-shaped face. So I'm getting that upper edge there of the heart. So we see where the top of the heart dips into the face, and keeping that super soft, because those are all very super soft, light feathers of that facial disc. So you should probably be even lighter than I'm drawing right now, just because I'm making it so you can see it. So remember, it's heart-shaped, so it's going to be kind of a little bit pointed down towards the bottom compared to the other family of birds. Remember, there's 2 families of owls, and these barn owls all have more of the heart-shaped face with the pointed sort of chin part of the facial disc. Then placing the eye, seeing where it is kind of in line with the wing. So I'm always comparing structures to one another, where they are at. And just being a little bit more careful, noticing this eye isn't a big old circle. It's a teardrop sort of shape, and we're going to want to leave a highlight in there. Later on, you might even want to draw a close-up of this face on the right side of your paper, in case you don't want to draw that other bird that's in the photo. Because this very beautiful face here, all this interesting, beautiful burnt sienna feathers that come off of the eye and come down and overlap the bill. So just drawing the little kind of hooked bill there. We don't see much of it. It's mainly covered by those kind of tactile feathers that help it to feel the prey items. And I guess its mate or anything else it might want to come in contact with. Now softening up the edge of that heart-shaped disc. And, you know, we can't get a whole lot of detail here because of the size, but we can just try. Okay, hopefully you're keeping up. Everybody's quiet in the chat box, so I assume you're keeping up. Okay, so now we're going to go And we're going to get some detail now on those legs. I know they're kind of challenging, so try not to be intimidated. We're going to get the kind of the forelegs there that are heavily feathered. So the outline of those is going to be pretty soft and feathery. And it's just the very end of the legs that don't have feathers on them. Very strong. So just really emphasize how strong those individual toes and talons are to be able to grasp their prey, whether it's a vole or a alligator lizard or a frog or even a grasshopper. So just kind of slowly looking at that right foot. We're going to draw the right foot first because it's in front, and we'll put the left foot behind it. And I'm not drawing the ring around its, I'm not drawing his silver bracelet. So, and just getting some loose feathery areas on his vent area. See, I'm avoiding the legs. Those are always intimidating. Okay, so now we're going to get to those legs and those individual toes. And again, you can't get a lot of detail, so it won't matter if you are very good at this or not because it's pretty small. But we're just going to notice that the right foot, we can see 3 toes. Well, basically 2 toes that are parallel to each other facing forward. So get the claw there of toe number 1, claw of toe number 2, and the toe and claw of number 3, which is kind of angled, pointing down at like 5 o'clock. And then there's the rear toe that would normally grasp the back of a branch. Make sure you get that right leg stronger. Those lines will be stronger than the leg that is hidden on the left. And that leg, we primarily just see the front 2 toes that are parallel, but they kind of overlap, so you don't see much there. And I'm just trying to go more slowly and carefully. And getting that left leg. This does take some time. And just looking at your reference photo here on the left, if you can. See, they have those strong pads on the undersides of the toes to help them grasp their prey as well as grasp the branches. Owls will often roost on a horizontal branch very close to the trunk. Okay, so that's the general outline. We're going to continue now getting some more details. I know we've already gone an hour, but it did take us a bit to get started. So hopefully you can hang around or you can watch the replay. So we're getting some details on the tail. We can see we're drawing some parallel lines to see those 6 feathers of the right side of the tail. And then very light feathers that are under the tail and in the vent. A little bit more detail there to finish out before we move on to the right wing. Now the details of the right wing. And it's shadowed underneath there. Okay, the right wing. So we're going to get the forearm there. So strengthening up that forearm, and you see it's very strong line, and it's very much in the sun. So there's kind of like 2 parallel lines that I'm drawing that are where the sun is really capturing that leading edge of the forearm. And then we've got the alula, the 3 feathers of the thumb basically, and then the primaries. And that feather really arches. And like I said before, those 10 primaries are all radiating out from that wrist joint next to and below the alula. So kind of an arched line. And, you know, we don't have to get particular here, but I am going to sort of count these. There is a big triangle here of these 10 primary flight feathers. And since this is the part of the bird that is closest to us in the photo, maybe even as much as a foot closer to us in real life, I'd like to emphasize those even maybe more than they would be. So we see this big triangle of feathers, okay? And those are 10 feathers. But don't worry if you don't get them exact, but we're just going to draw them. And the very outermost one that I'm pointing at with the orange pencil is on top, because we're looking at the underside of the feather. So now we're doing just these kind of half circles, and noticing too that each feather is kind of flattened at the end. So they kind of, the shape varies depending on which feather it is on the bird. The farther back they go, back towards the secondaries, the more blunt they are at the end. So I'm just pointing with the orange just to keep track so that we can kind of count, but don't worry if you don't get it exact. But since I am a trained biological illustrator, I can't help but try to be a little bit accurate, especially if I do have a photograph to draw from. So again, the joint right there is where all of these lines are going to radiate from. And I'm just sort of doing them symbolically at this point, not totally accurately. I'm getting a little bit off, you see, but just wanting you to keep in your mind that these are each overlapping as we go farther towards the base of the bird. Now we've got a big set of these 15 or so, yeah, let's see, I wrote down 15 or so of the secondaries and tertials, which are the smallest feathers at the very end. And I'm not being exact as those, but those are all attached in the parallel along the forearm. And if you want to be able to be more confident drawing birds and their feathers, I would suggest you study bird skeletons, mounted skeletons, or photographs of them. Okay, so now we're going to do the other wing. This should be a little bit easier. So notice we're drawing the top of the wing. We got the alula again. We're going to firm up. There's actually 3 feathers. You can't see them very well, but if you study, you know, bird anatomy, that really helps you before you go out in the field to sketch. So you kind of know what to look for. So even if you don't see it totally accurately, it'll help you a lot. Now we're going to draw those primaries, that same group that we drew before, of about 10 of them, but they're farther away from us and we can kind of blur those out. So you don't have to be as exact, but I will be pointing to each one so you can keep track. And again, noticing where they're radiating from the alula area. That's the wrist, where all those primaries are going to be attached to those finger bones that we can't really see, that are shortened, a lot shorter than, say, in a bat, which has the same bones but shaped a bit differently, and their fingers are longer to have the outstretched flight membrane attached. Okay, so anyway, we saw those feathers. Now I'm just going to strengthen those up, and noticing how those overlap. Each of those lines represents a feather that's on top of the feather going out. So again, pretending you were an ant, if you were walking from the base, the bird's back out onto the outer wing, just like an airplane wing, each of those feathers would go under until you got to this very last feather, which is going to be the very most underneath. So that's just the most aerodynamic shape for being able to fly. And just double checking, just kind of counting. I think you can see about 10 of them, but they are a little blurred. And again, if you're intimidated about this or if we're going too fast, you can just kind of loosen this up, lighten the lines, or even smear them with your finger. And that's fine because that's the wing that's farther away. And so it would be more, it would be more blurry in real life if we didn't have this high resolution photography that shows just about every single micro feather, right? But I'm just strengthening these lines just so you can see them. Okay, so now we got that whole outline. We're finishing up by just adding a little bit of shading. Now, shading takes a long time to add three-dimensional form and all these colors and patterns. We don't have time for that today. But we're just adding a little bit of an emphasis because we do see some shadows here on the neck. And so whatever kind of pencil, if you have a different shading pencil, this is what I'm using now. I'm using a richer, darker shading pencil. And sometimes I use it on its side to get more graphite on. So I'm just going around like here. I'm using it on its side, going around looking back and forth at the areas that are darker. So don't see this bird as a white bird or a cream-colored bird. Now we're trying to look at the shadows and the markings, like this barring on the tail and the cast shadows on the body from the wings. And then we're almost done with at least what we're doing today, because we could go forever, of course. These owls, owls in general have very beautiful, cryptic, camouflaged coloration. So you could take a long time to do a drawing of one of these for sure. So I am just starting. Generally, you do just want to start with getting the three-dimensional form before you add any of the colors or textures. That's your basis. So you see I'm really noticing these cast shadows under the wing. There, okay, and then there's shadows where the underwing coverts are located, and I blurred them a little bit with my finger, and you can also blur if you have one of these smudging stomps, or you can use even a Q-tip to blur if you don't want to use your finger, something that's more pointy and can get you some more exact details. So I'm just kind of checking back and forth, looking at this bird, not so much as a bird, but a collection of light and dark values. I'm just giving a little bit of details to separate out these wing feathers. And all these beautiful kind of spots and streaks and stripes. We don't have time for, but you can just notice that there's each feather has a bunch of lines on them. So I'm just doing that really light and loose. You could always refer back to the slide that showed the feathers if you want to get those in more detail, or you can look online. There's some very good websites that show all of the feathers of a bird, like Feather Base. So just getting a little bit of that dotted, spotty pattern of that gray and black on the head and the back and the sides. Again, we're kind of pretending this is more of a field sketch than a finished, this is definitely not an Audubon Society painting. This is a quick field sketch, just trying to get a little bit of a suggestion of three-dimensional form and colors and patterns. And it's your homework to put some added three-dimensional form and colors and patterns on this later on. Okay, so we're almost done. I'm just going back with my sharper, harder mechanical pencil, just adding a little bit more detail. Working on that line, like Elaine said, you know, that's a line of dark feathers, and you know, that's going to move a bit depending on how the bird is moving those facial feathers to capture the prey, and whether it's warm or cold. But generally, yeah, they look like a tear almost that's coming out of the bird's eye down. Now just doing a little light dotting pattern of those black and gray streaks and spots on the body. And you can always go back to this slideshow and look at any of the earlier photographs to see this pattern better in better light when they're not flying. Now, since this is such a widely ranging bird, there's going to be a lot of different subtle color morphs between the individuals, depending on where they're living, their habitat, their whether they're male or female, or adult or juvenile, or whether they're up towards Alaska or down towards Central America. So there is a lot of variation. Just be cognizant of that if you're looking at other reference photos. Okay, we're just putting some final details. We're strengthening this wing because, like I indicated in the video, it's coming towards us. It might even be 6 inches or a foot closer to us than the face. So we want to emphasize that. And again, just showing the overlapping of these feathers. Even though they're a little blurred, again, we're going to emphasize that. As the artist, we want to make it easier for our viewer to see that that wing is coming forward. And I made a little movement markings there on the paper, strengthening those claws because those talons are super strong. And just shadowing a bit more on the undertail coverts. Just one more time, strengthened that line on the right wing to show the forearm coming forward. Little shadow under the neck. And we're just about done. And then we can share. Milana can share. So we're just about done. And so if anybody wants to share, like Milana, I know your internet works. You've shared before, so I'm going to click on your name. So if you're only watching us on Facebook, I'm sorry, you can't share here, but you can certainly share with that hashtag on social media and on the BirdsCaribbean website. You can share it probably in the comment section of this live video. So if you are over here on Crowdcast, you can type your name in the chat box. And there's Milana. Hello, we haven't seen you for a while.
I drew mine in a different position because I was a little mixed up by how short the legs are from its tail and all that stuff.
That's okay. That's great. Beautiful. How are you?
Good. I got a new mechanical pen. It's a mechanical pen and pencil.
Oh, fabulous. And you used color pencil too, it looks like, Milana.
Yeah. I used my white pencil to smooth it all down.
Oh,
and on art class, in a different class, I drew this.
Beautiful. What species is that?
Don't know. I didn't read what it was, but I just found a random book and started drawing.
It looks tropical, maybe like a parrot or something.
It's a parrot.
That's beautiful. Well, the people in the chat box are saying, wow, very nice job, Milana. Okay, great. Thanks for sharing. We hope to see you again soon.
I wonder if it's an Amazon parrot.
Oh, an Amazon parrot. Yeah, Amazonia, maybe.
Bye.
Hey, take care, Milana. Bye-bye.
Bye.
She's one of my regular students. She hasn't gone live for a while. Okay, anybody else want to come on live and say hi before we wrap this up? We're not too far behind schedule, and we are done with the main content. So if you have to go, you can go. But Lisa did put in the chat box. My pillow's coming off. Lisa did put in the chat box the hashtag to share on social media. So whether you're on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook or I don't know, whatever else there is out there in the world, we'd love to see your sketches when you're finished. Yeah, Nancy said the head was tough. That's right. So you can go back and look at that photograph better that gives a close-up of the head. And yeah, so anybody else want to share before we get going? I'd love to see your sketches, or if you have any questions about owls or about drawing or anything about birds in the world or anything for Lisa Sorensen. She's our co-host today, the executive director of BirdsCaribbean. That's Lisa Sorensen. Lisa, did you want to come on again and say goodbye with me? Tell me in the chat box. Mike says, thanks. That was fun. Great to see you here again, Mike. Okay, I see so many familiar names. So I'm inviting Lisa back up then to wish you well and tell you anything else she needs to tell you. And Nancy says, this was great. Not easy. No, well, just like any skill, like doing yoga or playing an instrument or anything else you want to learn, it takes practice. But remember, don't be focused on the product. Today, I want you to feel good about your progress in terms of understanding the form and the function of these owls and maybe appreciating them a bit more. Because a lot of people don't know about owls much. They live, they're nocturnal, and we don't always see them, so we can't appreciate them as much. Anya says she needs a little bit more time to work on her drawing. Okay. And Lisa, I have invited you up, and you should be coming on here any moment now. Yes, so sometimes it takes a moment. Yeah, Lisa, I can't click on you again. I can only click on you once, so sometimes it just takes a moment. Yeah, so I'm so glad that you all were here today. We had great attendance today. And again, you can always watch the replay if you missed something or if you want to go back and study those photographs we showed in the PowerPoint slideshow. If anybody else wants to share, just click on, just say your name and say share in the chat box. So I just want to thank everybody for coming today. I want to thank Susan and Jacqueline and Joji and Anya and Elaine and Nancy and Cheryl and Mike and Diane and gee, who else was here? Want to thank Ria and Christine, Jim and Eve, Catherine, Kira. Hi, Kira. How are you? Oh, you usually share. I'd love to have you share. Dennis, nice to see you. And Nancy, Witha, great. So unless there's anybody else, let me scroll down here. Oh, Mike can share. Okay, great. I know Mike's video usually works. It's wonderful to have people come up on screen and say hello. Some of you guys are my regular students, so you're braver about sharing. Maybe that'll bring out the confidence in the others. Hey there, Mike. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm sort of at work, so. But yeah, here we go. So.
Fabulous, fabulous.
Yeah, that is a tough bird, for sure.
It is. Well, I like to be challenging, and a lot of you folks have been doing sketching with me for quite a while, and some of you have done this series. Remember, we did the Northern Pintail and the American Kestrel, which itself was pretty challenging. So want to just keep pushing you guys a little baby steps at a time to get better.
Well, you are. Thank you.
Good. Okay, great. Thanks. I got some other folks to share. So ciao.
Ciao.
Okay, Joji, I know she's brave and she can share. Let's see, who else? Elaine and Cheryl say, good job, Mike. Lisa says, wow. So make sure to put these. Oh, hello there.
Oh, it's Joji. Hang on.
Hi, Joji.
Something about this computer. I have to turn it around. I don't know. Anyways.
Hello. Hello. Thanks for sharing. I love the crashing waves in your background. Beautiful. I love the movement there.
Thank you. And then this morning I did the other one with you. The it's not done yet. This one. Your spooky.
Oh, fabulous. Yes, for those of you who don't know, I'm doing a series on spooky nature topics. And so we did owls this morning with the great horned owl. So you can find out about that on my Crowdcast page as well, that same page that we're broadcasting from now. Okay, great. Well, so much, you guys. Happy holidays.